Mel Brooks, a legend of comedy, responsible for such amazing movies as, I don't know, Blazing Saddles, Spaceballs was the first one where I encountered it. Also Men in Tights and History of the World Part 1. He is a legend in the comedy world going back decades and decades and decades. He said the following. When asked if he could make a movie essentially like Blazing Saddles today, he said, no, maybe Young Frankenstein, maybe a few, but never Blazing Saddles because we have become stupidly politically correct, which is the death of comedy. It's okay not to hurt feelings of various tribes and groups. However, it's not good for comedy. Comedy has to walk a thin line, take risks. Comedy is the lecherous little elf whispering into the king's ear, always telling the truth about human behavior. A lot of folks came back and said, actually, no, that's not the case. Paul F. Tompkins, who is a really great comedian who's worked, I don't know, pretty much if you've seen some comedy done lately that's like really smart, he's probably been involved. He said, PC culture is not killing comedy. There's still plenty of comedy. There always will be. Times change and so do comedy styles. There's plenty of edgy satire out there, stuff that takes on the powerful. So is PC culture killing comedy? Thoughts, 5 words or less.
Gender and race jokes, tired.
Yes, it's killing comedy.
Comedy is dead. Long live comedy. So what do you mean by your statement?
Yeah, I think, well, so you said that gender and race jokes are tired. They are.
It's like I feel like I've heard it. Like, okay, I get it. Like it's funny. Like I loved, Chappelle's show. He made fun of black people all the time. He made fun of himself. He made fun of white people. Like I get it. And like there's gender jokes too, but. Like I said in the article, I feel like it's always evolving, just as music is, just as movies are. I feel like it is always evolving. I don't think the same things that were funny back then are necessarily funny now.
Right, and I agree with that. The reason why I said yes, it is killing comedy is just for simple fact that we're hypersensitive to everything. Okay, so you had what 20 years ago in Living Color. Great sketch comedy show. If that was on today, guaranteed it would not be on today because the things that they would talk about and the stereotypes that were funny then would be super offensive now. But I think with the racial climate and how even with social media, how you could say something that's completely taken out of context and it be an issue, people are afraid. They're afraid to be edgy, to have edgy satire. Yes, there's plenty of edgy satire out there now, but I think there would be more edgy satire if we didn't live in the world we live in our current day and age.
So have you guys seen Blazing Saddles?
No. I've seen Spaceballs.
Do you know what Blazing Saddles is?
It's a bar in West Hollywood.
It's amazing, yeah. Blazing Saddles is a perfect name for a bar in West Hollywood. Blazing Saddles is a comedy set in the Old West. And there's like this, and Mel Brooks plays like this governor of like the territory. And in order to get a town to get like torn down, they want to sabotage it by giving it a black sheriff. And so the N-word is all over this movie. They say it hundreds and hundreds of times, and not the black people, the white people in it are dropping N-bombs all the time. And I think that's what Mel Brooks is getting at, is like you just can't have that happen. In a movie now, people are really sensitive, they're not gonna let it happen. But if you watch that movie, when the white people say it, in terms of satire, it is more effective because the white people sound fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's the joke. And I think Mel Brooks goes after it, and I think he's a little blind because he says when he's asked, like, what won't you go after? He's like, the Jews dying in gas chambers. I think he's just identifying in his comedy world, from his perspective, there's certain things that are off limits because they affect, I don't know, he has a personal connection with them. And I think everyone has those spots in their comedy where it's like, don't joke about that, I'm not ready to. And that is referenced to in one of the laws of comedy, which comedy equals tragedy plus time. When people say too soon, that just is the kind of thing that's totally off limits.
Right.
But I'm with Paul F. Tompkins in here in that, like, I think there is plenty of satire. There are plenty of things that are not off limits that, there's a thing in the New York Times today about how like these folks it used to be that like late night comedy was a place to just tell jokes about anything but making people think about how messed up the world is.
Right.
But now it is like a place to do that. And that's what comedy's doing. So I just think that like this happens to comedians over time where like eventually they say, oh, it's not like it used to be and something's wrong, I can't laugh at the people now. But I don't know.
Do you think, Brett, though, I mean, those are all awesome points, and I mean, thinking about my own response to this, because I'm not a comedian, so I mean, I really, my mind doesn't work that way, but do you think that this PC culture is doing a disservice to people's conversations in general? Because, okay, let's say, Daron, me and you have a conversation and you're not, it's not racial, nothing, but you're so afraid because we're so easily triggered now. We're so easily, like I said, we're hyper aware that you're afraid to even have a true, authentic conversation because you're afraid of offending me. And that's like, it's like a pandemic now. It's like, I just want to talk, period, because you may misinterpret something I'm saying as racist, misogynistic, homophobic, et cetera, when that's clearly, and especially if you are a person that is well-spoken, well-versed, that's clearly not your intention. Do you think that's where we're coming to just as a society?
I think what you're concerned about is where comedy should go immediately.
Yeah.
Like that's where it lives. There's something funny in that people trying to have a conversation to improve the world are afraid to say stuff. It's like, well, if the world was in such dire straits that you needed to improve it so intensely, why would you leave anything out?
Yeah.
Right, so that's the irony in it that you would go to for comedy. I think that there's different eras in comedy that come and go. So like there was a time when people were super politically correct. And I think that was like in the early 90s. And so Bill Maher came out with politically incorrect as a way to like call out things because comedy can't, I don't think there's anything that's off limits in comedy. I think it can feel off limits because you didn't do it right, but I don't think there's anything that's off limits. And as soon as you think that things are off limits, then your comedy suffers, I guess is it. I don't know, like what are the funniest things right now that you guys think are being made? Who's doing the best comedy in your mind?
Again, I don't watch a lot of comedy. I think I like Insecure. I love the show Insecure. That may not be comedic. Well, I mean, Issa Rae, there's an element of comedy in that, but I think I look more for realistic, real situations and the things I consume now, things that I can connect with. You know, we talk about the N-word and people saying the N-word. Brett and you had a conversation about reclaiming, we had a couple weeks ago. And if you watch Insecure, I mean, Issa Rae's wearing a shirt that says, you know, niggas. So, I mean, so it's like, but that's a very real thing for black people. So that's why I gravitate towards that. Not saying it's right, but I gravitate towards that because to me that's real. That's something that's happening. So I don't know about comedy, but for me, I look for things that are imitating life, I guess, you know, as far as what I consume these days.
I think for me, I don't even know. I mean, Master of None, I think is like just an incredible show in general. And I think in that show, I don't know if you watch it.
I've never seen it before.
Have you seen it?
I have watched it, yeah.
You know, the episode that Lena Waithe won the Emmy for is really, really incredible. You know, she's an African-American woman. She's also gay. She's trying to introduce her girlfriend to her grandma and her mom, who she thinks is gonna just like blow up about it. You know, I think, so, and that probably was a real life struggle for her. And you know, she puts it out in a way that is like digestible for people, but also still funny, but not offensive. So, you know, like you said, I think, you know, if it's not done right, then it's like not okay.
Right, so things like Insecure and Master of None and Louie are shows that, and Atlanta. I think Atlanta is the best of them right now.
Your eyes just went cross. You say Atlanta.
Atlanta, my eyes go cross. But those are shows where I will more often go, wow, this is good, than laugh. Like, I'll just go like, this is well done television. But I won't like laugh. And so that's not comedy to me. That is like virtuoso performer personalities doing things that just prove how good they are at doing things. The Insecure I think could be better acted. I think Master of None could be much better acted. And I think that gets too caught up in like, oh, I'm a hipster foodie. Like, stop, move on. But each of them can have like really, really funny, amazing moments. But I think comedy definitely, to more Mel Brooks's point, like comedy definitely can't stay still. It can't keep doing the same thing. And I think a lot of comedians who have, and I love Mel Brooks and he's still fucking hilarious. I mean, he's over 90 years old and he's still like on stage telling jokes and sounds just the same as he did before.
Yeah.
But it's in trouble if it stays still. So I think if Mel Brooks looks at it and be like, it says like it's different than it used to be, I think that's probably a good thing because it's changing.
Yeah.
And I still think that like in our world, political comedy is where it's at right now.
Yeah.
So I just think that if I were to give Mel Brooks the benefit of the doubt, I think he would say that maybe the industry of comedy doesn't give as many green lights to folks that are absolutely pushing the envelope, and instead will like default to the easy choice.
Right.
And I think that's what he's getting at. But I mean, comedy will continue to push boundaries, and if you're thinking it's getting vanilla, well then you just need to find like the more edgy comedy and you'll be fine because people are always doing that. What do you guys think? Give us your thoughts in the comment section below. Shout at me for saying anything bad about fucking Insecure. And I'll see you next time on Pop Trigger.